Sadly, once again, we've seen a lockdown in Victoria, and we'll be waiting anxiously to see whether that infection is transmitted interstate. We'll be joined by Sky contributor and Victorian Liberal power broker after the break to talk about that in particular and national politics in general. But firstly tonight, last weekend, the New South Wales National Party retained the state seat of Upper Hunter, which had been vacated by its incumbent amid a sex scandal. The seat did appear to be ripe for the picking, yet the Nationals held on comfortably. Their leader, John Barilaro, managed to enjoy a swipe at the miserable ghost himself, Malcolm Turnbull. The media were somewhat divided as to the national ramifications of that result. Some insisted that it was decided purely on state issues, and let's be frank, incumbency is a powerful factor in the current climate. However, the consensus seems to be that Labor does face an existential crisis, especially amongst its blue-collar base, particularly the portion of it whose jobs are directly linked to mining. One Labor MP, the member for Patterson, declared that the party risked sleepwalking off a cliff. To discuss what the Federal National Party are taking from the result, I'm joined by their former deputy leader, Bridget McKenzie, who's joined us before on the McGregor Angle. Bridget, welcome.
Fantastic to be here.
Nice to have you. Look, Upper Hunter, I know there's a bit of a sort of a beltway divide as to just what its significance has been. Tell me what your colleagues in the Federal National Party have been saying this week. You'd be drawing some solace from it, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it shows that when you actually focus on what the people in your community want and need and where they see their future, and you're unequivocal about that, then they'll back you in. And I think John Barilaro and his team was very, very strong about not just backing mining jobs. The Nationals, it's about those manufacturing jobs, and the Hunter's got a fantastic advanced manufacturing hub. I was there a couple of months ago with my Senate team, but also agriculture, construction and the like. So it's not just mining jobs. I think it is that broader, hard-working Australian, the people that built this country, who love their families, love their job and love their country. They're the ones that I think Labor, you're right, is having an existential crisis, chasing that sort of woke vote in inner city capitals and forgetting the people that really built their party.
And indeed, you look at members like Meryl Swanson from Patterson and Joel Fitzgibbon.
That's right.
They are very aware of the threat. They're good representatives of their local community, and Joel seems to be pretty much on the brink almost of doing a Craig Kelly on the ALP. But just to take it back, you were among a small number of Nationals who belled the cat on emissions, the zero to target by 2050, and I would have thought this result vindicates you enormously, showing that when it comes to jobs and reliability of supply and exemptions for hard-working farmers, people are more focused on that than they are on allegations about sex misconduct in this building or on other personal pronouns issues and the like. So I guess you saw this coming.
Well, I think when we're sent to places like federal and state parliament, our job is to stand up for the people that sent us there, and we've been doing that in the National Party for 100 years here in Canberra. So when we hear talk about zero emission plans by 2050, my first question was, and others, who's going to pay for that?
Yep.
And I think for us, we've been unequivocal with the Prime Minister, we've been unequivocal in federal parliament that it won't be our people that pay the cost of chasing an emissions target at all. Particularly, I think, when you don't, not just agriculture, it is the mining jobs and it is advanced manufacturing. I mean, that reliability of electricity supply is critical for that to be a sustainable industry and employ hundreds of thousands of Australians, not just in the regions. So we need to be looking at an energy solution that actually fits the bill on reliability and affordability, not just about lowering emissions. And that's, I guess, why my Senate team has put those amendments into the Senate around revisiting nuclear energy as an efficient source. And you've seen, I think, the EU and the UK free trade agreement negotiations over recent weeks. We've seen, effectively being lectured to by our competitors internationally, whilst they avail themselves of uranium, 40% out of our backyard, as they have low emission energy production.
Now, not so long ago, Larry Anthony gave a clarion call to the National Party, and in not widely reported speech here in Canberra, where he unabashedly described the party as a Conservative party. And I know that would be music to the ears of many Conservatives, including some Liberals who seem to feel as though the party is disenfranchising them slightly. So while Labor clearly is facing a schism amongst its traditional voters and its tertiary educated inner city constituency, how do your colleagues feel about the reliability of the coalition partner? You've held the line at 2 successive federal elections now. Is there a sense that you're worried that the senior leadership of the Liberal Party, especially those based in New South Wales, may be drifting a bit, one, on energy issues and may not totally comprehend just how anxious the base are about things like religious freedom, for instance, and other issues of importance? Yeah,
Catherine, you raised a really excellent point. We had our national conference here a month ago, and our former President Larry Anthony and former Coalition Minister spoke about the importance of faith, the importance of freedom, the importance of family, and they're key values for us as a party, and we don't back away from that. I think when you ask about the coalition, for over 75 years, the Liberal and the National Party have had a very successful partnership. You think about Menzies and John McEwen that saw us through that post-war reconstruction, and really their economic policies and leadership saw quite a golden era during the 50s and early 60s for our country as we emerged from the war as an independent sovereign nation. So that was a coalition that did that. I think we're going to see a similar effort post-COVID, and it will require a level of pragmatism but also a commitment to values. And I probably see the National Party's role in that coalition is to provide that ballast, to provide that very centred, clear articulation of the things that are important to us and to so many Australians, and that is their family, their faith, their community and their country.
And are you confident we'll see religious freedom legislation in the life of this parliament? Because the worry I think some people have articulated is that, yes, we're setting an example to the world almost on managing the pandemic, but it's led to a sort of a pragmatism and a managerialism, while the left are still fighting the culture wars pretty vigorously. And Scott Morrison gave a foray that gave some encouragement, I think, espousing his faith to a Jewish audience in Melbourne and an evangelical audience on the Gold Coast. Are you confident that we're going to see action from your coalition partner, who ultimately does have carriage of this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I mean, we went to the last election giving, overtures and promises around being able to deliver on that. And I think it's not just the Pentecostal movement that's wanting to see this, but it's the more traditional forms of faith, and not just Christianity. As you mentioned, Judaism, Islamic communities, Sikh communities are wanting to see a protection of the faith and their way of life and their values. And we need to be able to deliver that, because I think that freedom is fundamental to who we are as a liberal democracy. So I hope that we deliver on that promise before the next election. I think Australians deserve at least that much from our government.
And I was sad, and it looked as though George Christensen despaired of achieving those outcomes. He doesn't seem to think sitting in Parliament's a place to achieve that kind of meaningful change. So I'm pleased to hear there's someone with optimism on that front. How will you go?
Well, you wouldn't be in this place if you weren't an optimist, Catherine. You've got to fight.
It does strain your optimism,
That's right.
Granted. How will you go in Dawson without George? Because it's pretty solid National Party territory, and Upper Hunter would encourage the view that it's eminently holdable. But the coalition's top heavy or at full weight virtually in Queensland. New South Wales shaping as a battleground. He was a wonderful campaigner last time and really leveraged that Bob Brown convoy and the other assailants who tried to take him out. You feeling okay about Queensland and George's seat in particular?
Well, I think the proposition we took as National Party MPs and senators in Queensland, probably led by George and Maddie Canavan and Michelle Landry, was to be, again, unashamedly standing with our working class communities and fighting for local jobs against, green activism and the Labor Party. We're going to do that again, but without the conviction politician and I guess the authenticity that George Christensen brings to the role. So I'm sure the LNP will pre-select a suitable candidate when the time comes, but we're not taking a backward step in standing up for the people that back us. I mean, that's what they send us here to do, and we'll be looking forward to continuing that fight.
And speaking of pre-selections, there's some prospect that,
Yeah.
you know, much admired former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson might have itchy feet and miss the place and want to come back. What's your feeling on the outcome there?
Well, it's going to be a tight competition, I think, in New South Wales. There's a lot of great candidates, quite a large field, but John has a great tradition and history in the party. He's been speaking out a lot in recent years around the importance of conservatism and Western civilisation and those libertarian values that we hold so dear. I interviewed him for my book, Into Blackjack McEwen,
Okay.
and he was concerned not just about where Parliament's heading, but indeed the nation. So he's looking forward, I think, to making a contribution if New South Wales National Party pre-selectors make that decision, and that is absolutely their choice and right. I'm sure they'll make the right call.
All right, deftly and diplomatically answered. So after the budget and a reset that seems to show just how out of touch the Twitterati are, in that all the issues that led to outrage, the scandals arising from the rape allegations arising from Ms Brittany Higgins and other matters involving the Attorney-General, all of that does not appear to have dented the government's standing irrevocably. What's your feeling? Late or early? We're going to the polls this year or next year? So
Well,
just between
I
you
know,
and me.
I know, just between you and I and
You don't know?
all your viewers. Look, I think the Prime Minister's made it clear he wants to go as late as possible.
Yep.
But obviously there's a raft of factors that'll play into that. I think we need to get the vaccine rolled out. I think the budget's landed incredibly well. Australians seem very comfortable with the direction the government's heading in. And so, I don't know, I'm going to call October, but I wouldn't put any money on it.
Yeah, I've been in the Paul Kelly camp. I've always thought it's more likely that he would exhaust the term. They're hard enough to win.
And he's been clear about wanting to do that.
Yeah, but then you've had, of course, Labor's own leader earlier today stood down in New South Wales, and I suspect that the PM would love to run against Albo and would not be taking any
who
chances.
wouldn't?
Exactly.
I mean, he's so out of touch with everyday Australians. When you've got MPs like Joel Fitzgibbon and Merrill calling out, saying, wake up to the Labor Party, you are forgetting who we are and where we've come from. And time again, it seems the Labor Party is again fighting on the left instead of actually understanding that elections and Australians are in the centre.
It's indeed. Well, we don't want to intrude on private grief with them. So, Bridget McKenzie, thank you so much for joining the McGregor Angle again. And that game of golf with you and the member for Patterson sounds like it might be very tempting, long as I get to hit off the back tee.
Absolutely, always.